right. Hello, guys. I am Leonard O'Neill, and this is The Way. Okay, so let me get into talking about that, right? I gave you guys a little bit of tidbits last time that, I've studied since I was probably 12 to 15 years of age, every religion that there is on the face of the earth that I could find. Even on movies and in books and their philosophical leanings from everything. Well, every book, every movie, every storyline, everything that I've ever seen. And did a comparative analysis of all religions and their history and where they came from and the whole, and as far down that rabbit hole as you could possibly go. I am a minister, ordained minister. I've been knighted by the Catholic Church. So I'm not just, some guy who just went, I come up with this thing, dude, it's called The Way. I called it The Way because I believed that it was the way the universe actually worked and the way it was supposed to. And I explain it like this to people when people say the devil, the greatest trick the devil ever performed was to get the human race to believe that he didn't exist. I think that was the second greatest. I think the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was getting the human race to fracture its spirituality into 10,000 churches, 10,000 different religions. Because if you take a look at all of every single religion like I have, and you look at what the message is that each one of them is trying to tell you, you'll find that all the messages are basically the same, but that they're split up. What do you mean by that? Well, your Orthodox religions that are based in a god or many gods are based in the worship of those gods, goddesses, or one god only, separate of yourself, other than you're the temple of faith. That's it. Okay? So you worship somebody else, and that you are a worshiper. That's your job, a worker bee. Okay? I believe that those religions were set up that way because that's the caste system. That's the system of a ruling class with a subclass below it or a slave caste below it. Those religions were set up that way to keep you in that mindset. Therefore, you would accept someone over you as an overlord, a king, a monarch, a god on earth, a god king like Xerxes, like the Kim Jong family over in North Korea, where they have their people believing they're gods. They did that with the Pope in Rome. They did that with the Caesars in Rome and the pharaohs in Egypt. They told their people they were gods on earth. Do you see? So they set up a caste system, thereby you accept the fact that someone rules over you, the church, the state, people rule over you. So that's wrong. That's set up by evil people. Okay? So if that works for you and you go to a box and you worship and that's okay and you're all right with it and you're oblivious to that portion of it, you can still ascend, but you're making it harder on yourself. But, that's just like when magic, where people were joining covens, same thing. It's set up with a caste system. It's always a pyramidal system. You notice how they use that. And there's always one person at the top. Look at Dianetics. You got Mankiewicz at the top and everybody's beneath Mankiewicz. Mankiewicz does whatever he wants to do. And if you don't like it, he ruins your life or he puts you in their little jail. Or both. Do you see? Kings, dictators, tyrants are thus. So those organized Orthodox religious doctrines are wrong because of the way they're set up. Wrong. Jesus tried to prove that, so did Muhammad, so did Moses, and they all got either killed for it or run out of town or both. Muhammad ascended before they could get to him. Jesus was got. Moses wasn't allowed. Go wander in the desert until you die, Mo. That's for you believing in me, the Lord thy God, for you freeing your people from bondage. Your reward is you don't get to come into the land of milk and honey. Go away. Go die in the desert. That's my edict as your God. Your reward for freeing a nation, convincing them to follow you, fighting off the ilk is that you get to wander and die. I'm sorry. That's not my God. Okay? See, do you understand that? So when you look at the Bible, you have to understand that any of these Talmuds, the stories that are in there, I wouldn't take as literal stories. None. If you take all of the stories as if they're parables, they're stories to teach you something, and you utilize that, you'll learn more out of the Bible than to believe that Jesus was an actual person and that he's actually the Son of God and then he was here and he died for you. But if that works for you, then don't judge. Problem is, you guys listen, Jesus told you, judge not lest ye be judged. He was without sin, throw the first stone, yet you guys are the first ones that if I say what I just said, you judge me and say the devil's got me, I'm possessed, I'm going to hell, and you tell me all this stuff. You do everything that Jesus told you not to do. Right? So you have to understand that if you are a good Christian and you are a God-fearing Christian, you would never say anything bad about anyone. That's bearing false witness. You wouldn't talk crap about somebody that's bearing false witness. You wouldn't judge them by saying, you're the devil, you're possessed, you're going to jail, you're going to go to hell. That's not your job. Shouldn't be doing that. Okay? So if you really are what you claim you are, you would never do that. So if you do that once, you're not what you said you were. Okay? That's the rules that have been set down by that church. Not me. Not my rules. I didn't set them down. Okay? But see, I don't believe that. I don't believe that a one true, all-knowing, all-seeing God would say, thou shalt not anything. Okay? You shouldn't do those things. Those things are moral issues that you shouldn't do anyways. You shouldn't do wrongdoing. So you shouldn't be having sex with with someone else's wife. You shouldn't be stealing from people. You shouldn't be lying about people. You shouldn't be bearing false witness about people. Those are just normal things that you should know. Okay, do you understand? Those are, but so they are good things, but God doesn't need to be the one to tell you that. God shouldn't have had to be the one to tell you that. Because God wouldn't tell you that. Okay? That's the fine line they don't want you to talk about. They don't want you to think about. However, if you listen to all of the things that people have, all of the religions they claim the religions are and say, then the one true thing about all of this is looking into oneself and reflecting on oneself. Now, to do that, you have to incorporate all of the religions, pull them all back into one. That includes, the Hindu religion and like the Tao in the Hindu and the Eastern philosophical thought, Near Eastern, Far Eastern. You have to grab all of those because the Celtic religions, the Viking religions, the Greek religions, the Roman religions, the African religions. If you look at all of them and you put them together, there is many underlining, overlapping, all-encompassing, positive things that should be being done. That's what I did and called that the way, and lived my life like that for 25, 30 years. And then one day on one of my shows, a couple of years ago, almost 2 years ago now, probably about 2 years ago now, I was saying something about the way and the way I've lived, and a friend of mine said, Leo, that's the law of one. And I said, what is the law of one? And she said, you need to read the law of one. I said, okay. She said that in the chat live. So I said, okay, after the show, I'm going to look up the law of one. I forgot after the show. Show went long. We did about 3 hours that day. And then I was trying to get everything production-wise going to remux it and get it ready to go and load it and premiere it in the whole nines. And, I forgot. Then I'm watching a video. and it was I can't think of his name right now. Give me a second. David Wilcock, and he said something about the law of one. And I was like, okay, wait, that's two people in one day that had mentioned the law of one. So I looked it up, went down that rabbit hole. 6 books later, I realized that that was my life. I was living that already. Everything that they said in there, I was doing. So it was validation that I didn't feel bad about meditating. I didn't feel bad about working on chakra points in my body, because that was just Eastern philosophy, right? But they didn't believe in the spiritualism that Western philosophy believed in, not just the faith portion of it, but the actual spiritual portion of it. But then they did in a sense, the Hindus did in a sense. So that everybody had a little bit of that, but no one had a lot of it. But then the Christians did at one point. There was a lot of personal spiritual thought, right? The Greeks went through that. So the Greeks, with their philosophical mindset, was very spiritual in that individuality. Okay, so there was a lot of that going on where you had to look into that. So when you put all that together, that's what I encompass. That's what I call the way, and that's the way I've lived my life. And whether people, and you know, we come now full circle and find out like the Knights Templar were driven out of you know, off the face of the earth for doing the same thing, right? And that was because they were exposed to the Eastern philosophical way of thinking and started to realize how all of that was encompassed and that it was taken from you and stifled. Why is that? Well, because with that becomes wisdom, and with wisdom it becomes insight, or begets insight, okay? Because you get knowledge, and insight gives you knowledge. Knowledge gives you wisdom. Wisdom gives you what? Thought of your own, independent. Okay, so the churches were set up to take that away from you. So they deemed anything that was independent thought heretic to the churches, the Orthodox churches, all the Christian ones, and most of the Muslim ones as well after Muhammad was gone. They wanted to teach you what they wanted, to indoctrinate you into their thinking, right? There was a time when the Christians would hunt you down and kill you. If you were not Christian, you would either convert or die. And the Muslims did the same thing, and there's still small sects of the Muslim religion that still does that, okay? I'm pretty sure there's still small sects of the Christian religion that still does that. They used to do that. They were the biggest offenders, was the Catholic Church. The Christian faith going around, once they became in charge, going around and convert or die. I mean, they were the biggest offenders. That they then, on top of that, they were forced. They would just show up places and convert everyone, you know. So they made an effort to go around the world and convert everyone. So now they look down on the Muslims for trying to do the same thing. Well, you guys did it, right? Showed up and tried to convert people. There's nothing wrong with any of those religions. They're all worshiping the same God, same thing. Just fighting over semantics. I've said this many, many times. Okay? So I don't care what religion you are. You shouldn't be any religion. The religions are going to hate me for that. I'm a heretic. They don't want to hear that because I'm taking their money away from them, right? Everybody wants your money for everything, okay? You should keep your money to yourself and learn for yourself. They don't want that because people come up with crazy ideas. You're right. Some people do. I said this before on my other show. Some people come up with crazy, crazy ideas, right? But as long as they're not hurting anybody, who cares? So I'm going to go forward with that. I know a lot of this is redundant from what I said before on here, but I wanted to make sure that I reiterated that so there was no confusion as to, you know, me not trying to make a religion out of the law of one just because I do a show about that, and I have. It's not influencing my way of thinking. It's just actually reinforcing the way of the universe that I thought was correct anyways, right? And then there's some people that would say that's all crap. Well, you know, that's up to you. That's the whole point of what we're doing here. Okay, so I am going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about religion. I'm going to talk about all this stuff a lot. You're going to hear me saying Jesus, Muhammad. You're going to hear me saying Elijah, King David. You're going to hear me talking about all this stuff because what I want to do is continue showing you comparatives, right? To show you that stuff and the way things work in the universe. So I don't know how far I'll go with this line of thinking, but this might be something that I might continue, and it might evolve. I'm going to be probably reading out of Talmuds to show you, because I think maybe I should do like I'm doing for the Law of One and interpret some of the stories in the Bible as to, not what they slanted it towards, but to what it really, really meant. Like when Jesus said, I will destroy this temple, or I will raise this temple to the ground and then raise it up again in 3 days. He wasn't talking about the synagogue, the temple. He was talking about his body. And he did just that. Do you understand? He was talking about his temple. And that's why when he was there on the cross, he said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Because they had no idea what they were doing, that if it was an offense of any way to God, because they didn't understand the true spiritualism and the true way that things should have been. Okay? So I'll be going over a lot of those stories, and this isn't going to be me trying to bend stories. I'm going to do the best that I can to try and interpret what the story actually was written about. Because the story of Adam and Eve and God not wanting them to have knowledge was either a lie, right? Not written by a God, because I say this all the time, why would this true, loving, caring, all-knowing, all-seeing God who created us to be in his image so that we could be greatness, then not want us to know anything? And that the fruit that was bitten gave us knowledge. And he got mad and kicked us out. Kicked out Adam and Eve from the garden. Well, what knowledge did they learn? That they were naked? That's what it says in there. Or that maybe that wasn't the one true God. So there's something there. And I think that that's what that story meant. And I'll go over it more while we read it so I can go word for word at another time. Okay. So we're right at the 17-minute mark here, and I'm not going to go any further. So I know that was a little redundant, but I wanted to make sure that you understood the track that I was going to take. So we're going to be taking a look at some of the stories from these different Talmuds around the world and see if we can wring out what it meant, what it truly meant, what the stories were truly trying to tell us, not what they tell you when you sit down in church. Unless it means the same thing, like never a lender or borrower be. That's pretty obvious what they're saying. Don't lend money out to people, because then you have to worry about getting it back and they're going to rip you off. And don't borrow money from people so that you're not in their debt and have them coming after you for favors. That's basic stuff. Well, it was in the Bible. Okay? So there's teaching things that are basic that are in there, and then there's teaching things that are a little more hidden that are in there. Okay, that are parables. That's why Jesus spoke. And if you went and listened to Jesus talk, he could talk for 3 hours and he would tell the same story 4 different ways. Because everybody in the audience didn't tend to learn the exact same way. That's the way it is in reality. They teach that when you go to management school. They teach that there's different ways people learn things. So you have to figure out in your group of people that you're trying to teach something to, which one each one is. Right? And that's what you do. And you segregate those people into those classes. Some people are doers. You have to see it done in front of them. Other people can read it and do it. Other people you have to show them by doing it, and then they can duplicate that all over the place, right? So that's the way some people are. Some people are self-starters, and they'll just go and get stuff and do it. Other people, you have to tell them what to do and give them a list. Some people, you can only give them 2 or 3 things on a list because they get confused if you give them 7 or 8 things. So you have to learn this about people. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with them. It doesn't mean that one person's better than the other. It just is the way you're wired. We learn that way. So the Bible knows that. The people who wrote that know that we're all wired that way. So some stories you're not getting the answer out of that story you think you're getting. And a lot of times the clergy just kind of blankets that in the churches, and they just make it, they dumb it down, make it simple, and hope that it hits most people. That's what they do. That's what they've done. They've tried to take it and blanket the whole thing for everybody to get. And that's why you have different sermons on different days that say different things as time goes, and then they'll explain. If you have questions later, you can talk to them, and they realize that, and they try to search for how you learn, and then they hit you with a parable. Okay, that's how that works. That's how that works when you're a minister. You learn those things. Okay, all right, guys. So that's today's drop, today's episode 2, I guess. Which, like I said, is kind of a little bit redundant in the beginning there, but I think I needed it to be that way just so that you understood, like I said, where we were going. All right, guys.